I think it's such a.
How do we feel
dickhead.
about swearing?
I say it's
Yeah.
chill.
Yeah, no, it's super chill. Yeah, I mean, don't show it to your daughter, but like, I'm just saying, like in
Daughter
general.
metaphorically.
Yeah, your metaphoric daughter. Anyone can have a daughter.
Okay.
I mean, it's possible.
I hate this conversation already. Where's the hate? I need to leave. To go, please, James. To go.
So what we're doing here is we're just like talking, bullshitting, shooting the shit around like writing, like our interests in writing, in literature, how we got here, you know, who inspires us, how we landed in the fields that we landed in, like, you know, just that kind of shit. It's just like literally like a dinner conversation, but we're talking shit about shit we like, and that shit like that we have in common as well. So does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Cool.
I definitely don't deserve to be here, but I'm just gonna wing it.
You did a whole children's book.
Yeah, but I mean,
You did? I want to hear about that.
Yeah, right. It's her story.
in due course.
Okay, but first tell me why. I mean,
Why I hate writing.
I'm not saying that because I'm surprised. I also hate it, but like, I guess, I don't know. Sometimes I hate it so much that I'm like,
Why am I
also
here?
I'm a writer. You know,
Which writing do you hate?
in a way, all.
I get that.
I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to. There are moments of joy, but it's like
Fleeting.
it really is like like pulling blood. And I like always have this romantic idea that there are writers out there who are like, you know, so many writers will describe writing as a necessity. That thing of like, I write because I can't not write. You know? And I'm like, I really can not write.
Yeah,
In
I'd
fact,
be
a lot of
okay.
the time, it's easier not to.
Yeah.
Right? But like, I feel like I should, you know, I don't want to, I'm like not going to be good at name dropping in this conversation because a lot of names go in and out of my brain, but for some reason one of the things I retain is that Zadie Smith quote that's become quite, yeah, I don't know, I guess, grammable. Where she says she writes so as not to sleepwalk through her life. And I feel like that's why I write, but it's definitely not because it's easy or like fun or I love it so much.
Yeah, like I mean, I keep dipping in and out of love with the motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like, because it's like, okay, cool, once you're finished, and you're like, oh shit, that's the story I'm telling. It's like, oh dope, okay, cool. I mean, like a whole thing out of my like mind graves. But then like when you're there and like you're having to figure out the sentence, like, you know what I mean? Because it's easier, like it's all done here. Like I know what the story I'm gonna tell is. I know how it ends up. Like I know it's an epic. I know it's like, you know, like I know all the moments that charge it. But then like you sit down and you're like, okay, cool. Now I gotta make other assholes understand it. Like,
Why can't you see what's in my brain?
yeah, exactly.
Britannia.
Dude, like I really just like I wish there was like some holographic machine where you could just like projection map like everything that's in your brain, and then you like, you know, you don't have to like write.
Are you the person who writes from start to finish? Like you start it and you take the whole journey from beginning to end, or do you write in pieces?
Right now, I'm writing in a linear structure, which is a little bit weird for me because I don't usually have a linear approach to stories.
Right.
But I'm like literally, and I think it's Saul Bellow's fault, because I'm reading Humboldt's Gift, and the way that he writes and the way he takes his time in that book is that, like, as he's writing, you fall into the memories of like that make up like this person, and then you get brought back into it. So like I'm doing that now, like where I'm like writing, and then I'm like, okay, cool, this needs context, and then I fall into a memory, and then I come back, and then like I'm like I carry on. So that's why I think I keep putting myself in corners right now, because I'm trying to like take it step by step.
Right.
Rather
But you
than
don't
jumping
start
in.
at the end, or like start where you know it's the middle, or then you try to start.
I usually can do that with other stories.
Right.
Yeah, but this particular one is actually like I've been doing that. So I've written 2 short stories this year, and I wrote them beginning to end. But I usually, with other short stories, I'd like I just piece them together, like Eminem learning how to freestyle on the bus. You know what I mean? Like you've got a line, like you write down a line, and then you know how to use it, like when you're in the battle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what it's been feeling like. How do you go about it?
I find process questions so interesting because like I often get this question when I'm working on a piece. I mean, you've actually caught me on a weekend when I'm working on a piece that I knew from when I started writing it, this is not going to sail. Like I can feel like it's not sailing, but I have a deadline and I have to get to it, and I still don't feel nice about it, even at this point. But
that's also the worst.
I hate it.
When it's just bad vibes from the beginning. And
I know it's not my best work, which I hate. But I'm interested in it because people often ask me when I'm like working towards a deadline, how far are you? And I don't know how to answer that question because 12. I don't write like, I'm 1,000 words. I write like all over, and then I like build it like layers, and I chuck things and I add things. I'm not like, I'm 1,000 words in, I have one. I don't know how people do that.
I think the difficulty for me is that I rely so much on like my academic strengths sometimes. So writing to a deadline that is like word count has it's bastardized my writing in some way because like, guys, we're going through a pandemic, like there's mental health issues, there's a deadline. So like I'm writing a word and then like I'll write like 3 sentences and then I'm checking the word count for like, am I there yet? And it's like,
150
all over again, right?
And then you're like, but if I hyphenate it, is it 2 words?
Oh God, I remember that. That's terrible.
That's crazy. It's weird because also like I feel like the ones that like I've got bad energy about are the ones that like people enjoy the most.
So interesting. And isn't it so disappointing when you've got such good energy about a thing and then you get an external person to read it and they just don't seem to get it? You're like, I have failed in my task of transporting this from my brain onto
the punctuation though, the grammar of this piece
is perfection.
Okay, cool, but the content? Grammar, my nigga. Nailed that shit.
Look at this
Nailed
comment. Look at this.
Yes. But it's right. Like I hate it when an editor comes back and you know so many people are giving you these like intakes and they're making all these like grammatical corrections. They're seeing your typos. Cool. And I'm like, yeah, but what did you think of like what I wrote? Like the ideas? Any thoughts? Any feedback? Oh, it's too much.
I hate too many like grammatical corrections.
Okay, but then do it correctly.
No, but sometimes I'm intentionally like, you know, like if I've got a black editor, the black editor will understand what I'm like doing more often than not. And like a white editor will come to you and tell you, no, the door swings open. The door wasn't swung open.
Hey, I put this lights off, the volume off. Stop it. You know what I mean. Leave me be.
Yeah. Like there's an intention over here. Like
I get that.
Yeah. What do you hate about writing?
I hate that I don't write as much as I used to because work writing has ruined writing.
The joy out
of
writing.
I write so much for work and now I'm just like, ugh.
What is your work?
So
dare I ask?
Oh,
you don't have to.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I run projects and comms for the Oliver and Adelaide Tambo Foundation.
Okay, so that's very different kind of writing to writing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And then writing the book was so much fun. It was hard to sit and write. We literally had to be taken out of Joburg because.
But also writing
was like.
Writing
you
with other
are
people.
You are playing, we've given you 468 deadlines.
Okay, so tell the story, because I don't know the story.
Yeah.
Who wrote it?
So it's me and 2 of my friends,
okay.
Tandi and Baba. We wrote this book called Her Story, Daughters of Mujaji.
I have actually seen
Stop
this.
it.
Yeah.
That makes me so excited. Do you want my autograph?
Yes.
No, stop it.
I'd like to sign.
I love how there was no hesitation in the yes.
Damn you for not letting me be sarcastic in peace. So yeah, we wrote this book because we were just like, there are like next to zero books for little black girls and little black boys to a certain degree, but about black women. This is crazy. What is happened? And we all have like nieces and things or little children in our life, and love giving books as presents and whatever. And we were like, who is this Barbie on this? Oh, stop. So, yeah, I took a leap of faith and wrote a book, and it's 30 stories about 29 Black South African women, or organizations like FEDSOL, or, those sorts of things, MK women.
Damn, so it's also like children's history.
Yeah, it's history.
Yeah.
It's history for children.
Awesome.
So like from Custard to Emma Mashinini to, just women that we were just like, God, you're such a trailblazer,
Yeah.
Jesus. Across the board, and that's what we did. But it was an excruciating part. I think also because we wrote together.
Yeah.
And that was...
Was there a lot of research involved?
Yeah, there was, and it was very eye-opening about ourselves, like who we were as friends. We're still friends.
Yeah.
But in that moment, like dealing with a lot of identity politics, like writing about hair stuff, and you have like 2 colored authors and a Black author, but like the one colored author has like dead straight hair, and the other colored author is me, and it was like fascinating because we were just dealing with all these things, like so.
Yeah, I mean that's hard. That's like you do
Yeah.
the research and then you're like, how do I write this for children? Which is also a skill out of this world.
So
skill.
difficult.
And like, how do you capture all that complexity?
And then because we're talking about like real life things, like casteism, and now you must explain like what is, all these different things. Like Tandi Klaasen, you're talking about gender-based violence. Now you must explain an acid attack and gender-based violence to like a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
And why would someone throw acid in your face? Like, so we had then incorporate like a glossary of terms, and then it was things. There were things, but it was amazing.
So they sent you away where?
Paris, because what was I going to
Paris.
do? What was I?
I think that is a stroke of genius.
Not even a beach shack.
Not even Krugersdorp.
You can be,
Not
you can
even
be distracted.
I would take Krugersdorp. At least I can visit the cradle of humankind.
Or like an Sisulu botanical garden. There's Dololo in Paris.
I've also been on a writing retreat in Paris.
You see?
It's a thing now.
There's nothing there.
And but I assume you didn't get it all done in this
No,
one.
but we did more than we had done the entire time, because...
How much time were you guys out there for?
3 days.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Because then you know that like, hey, we don't have time.
No.
Yeah.
And it's
And
also
then
one day
when you
each.
leave here. So first,
practically.
we all had to come up with women we wanted included in the book, women that had personally inspired us. And then the list was 167 people, and our publisher was like, so you thought it was a series of world books?
Encyclopedia.
And then she was like, you have to
Pretend
whittle
so.
this down to 30. And how do I choose between Winnie Mandela and Casa Semenya? Sorry, Winnie got the tab, but next time.
Yeah.
It was so hard, but Paris, and then we just wrote and researched, and they're like, you're not leaving whatever province that is until you've written the majority
It's the former Orange Free State, but now known as the Free State.
Is it in the Free State?
It is the Free State.
Yeah.
Northern Free State.
It's on the boundary.
the Northern Free State. The Northern Orange Free State.
That's the one.
What do you hate about writing, bro? I know
Or
you
maybe
hate writing.
don't.
I know you hate writing. You know why?
What do you
Because we've
write?
been waiting on your novel.
You better calm down.
Calling people out. What the fuck is this?
I've been waiting for this motherfucker.
I mean, do I hate it? I guess I hate not. I guess I like it, but I hate not being able to figure out a sentence or a paragraph, or which is often, it happens more often than I would like it to be honest. So that's what I hate. I hate this idea of, I guess I know what I'm trying to get at, but the words are just not like working out the way that I kind of imagine them to, and so yeah, that's what I hate. Sometimes it's not necessary for them not to work hard. I'm just like
Cooperate.
It's not necessary for you guys to do this.
not all the time. Like just work sometimes, most of the time.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty much, that's it.
I once watched this TED talk where J.J. Abrams was like, he loves Apple computers and whatever, and he admires like the work that Apple has done. And we've got all the politics around that. But he was like, when he sits down to write, most days he opens up his laptop and he looks at his Mac, and his Mac looks back at him and says, "What are you going to write that's worthy of me?"
See, my computer must never be that judgmental.
Let me tell you,
Answers nothing.
that computer is the straight white male of all computers.
That's fact. That's fact.
But this thing of tools is like a thing. I find do you write by hand anymore?
I do.
I do,
Yeah.
preferably.
I can't
I don't.
remember when last I
Don't you?
did.
You don't.
Really?
No, I just it's hard enough to fucking type on a computer. I'm not trying to like write and then have to like retype
Yeah.
But
it.
I
Yeah.
think better.
Yeah,
With a pen
I
and
feel like I'm
paper.
connected,
Yeah.
like to the thought.
There is some research on that would be like, yes, because even if people say that you should
Write in cursive. Stop dissing cursive, motherfuckers.
all these years we were told not to doodle and stuff
Yeah.
in class, but there's like a lot of evidence now that actually
Doodling
doodling
is
is helping
good,
you
yeah.
to process and receive the information. That
I guess
you're-
that's why my writing is work. Then I need to write by hand.
But I don't know. I mean,
It
I'm
might
like
be
in
better if I do.
Well,
that.
sometimes it helps to just get it out as a draft, and you don't even need to revisit it because you've already like kind of put it out as a thing, and then
I
the
can't.
thing
You
is
can
Like,
see it better on
So
paper.
I don't have this process of just putting on paper and then figuring it out later. Like for me, I have to like figure it out now. There's no like I'm gonna get back to this or whatever. Which is I guess
Yeah,
why
that's a lot
I
of
work
pressure.
slower. I kind of write. Yeah.
So do you also like follow a linear format when like writing?
Depends what form of writing I'm doing. So for the novel, I guess I don't have to because it's like all of these things which I know where they're kind of going, and there's
Yeah.
different characters and what stories form that character.
One day we'll meet them. Yes.
Yeah. It's gonna happen, man.
Please,
Like
it's
I'm
a
like on
pandemic,
it.
don't put pressure on.
I'm just saying, we all had time in this pandemic.
Did you
I had
want
work to do, man. I like.
No, I didn't.
But for essays, I think I'm far more structured, where it's from the beginning to the end.
Do you start writing not knowing how it's gonna end?
Nah. I mean, again, it really depends. Like, if it's a short story, I know where it's going. I know what's gonna ultimately happen.
Yeah.
But I guess the
Or you can
interesting
feel what's gonna happen.
for sure. But most of my short stories have ended because I'm just fucking tired of writing, and so I
Yeah.
just find a way out, and they fall.
Yeah.
That's
They fall
amazing.
very unfinished, but I'm just like, well,
Yeah.
that's what happens.
That's my whole life.
Yeah.
Like I can feel the ending, and then but like I just write for as long as I can,
For sure.
and then I just put the ending in,
Absolutely.
like right at the end, and it's just like
Absolutely.
I'm tired of staring at this computer, like
I
this
have
thing needs
like
to end now.
4 unfinished manuscripts that I have never revisited, and I think
a whole 4.
That's
yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
There's
Can you please at least give us the
Give
titles?
us one each, and then we'll finish it.
I couldn't finish writing it because
Can you give us the titles, please?
By manuscripts, you mean for novels or novellas?
Yeah, for novels.
Okay.
That's amazing.
I mean, the first one is not. Can I even call it a manuscript? I started writing it when I was 12,
Of course
and
you can.
I was just
No,
like,
you can't. I'm kidding. Yes, you can.
There's always that one dude. Like there's always that one like, snobby motherfucker in the crowd just being like, this isn't literature. This is pornography.
Like the Muslims of the adult world. That's what I'm telling you.
Adult.
Smart.
I mean, it starts with an idea, right? And
Yeah.
you're flowing, and it's like, yes, yes, yes. Then one day you're like, where are you going with the story? Like, what are you
Sure.
trying to achieve? How's it going to end? Because you know the juicy parts, you know the climax, you know everything. I mean, the one thing that I actually struggle with is like, because I know the plot, filling in the mundane parts, like,
That's my favorite part.
I woke up in
That's
the
my
morning,
favorite,
I brushed my teeth, I went outside, I drove to Santon, I came back, and I'm just like, okay, but can't I just skip to the part?
And now
where
you have to
everybody's
figure
like,
out
yo.
as he meandered down Santon Drive.
Exactly.
Past the Discovery Building.
Was the Discovery
Exactly.
Building.
Which
A
was
reflection
built in
caught his eye
1967.
and gave him astigmatism.
Also, because I like critique so much literature, it's hard for me to write.
Sure.
Because I'm like, is
critique
there
is
someone out there that's like, yeah, we're gonna see. Because like, you know, there's this, I don't know if I can name names, but there's this series of South African books that have come out that have exploded into like everyone is self-publishing, and it's like, it's OP.
Wow.
It is OP inside.
Can I say it's me? It's me.
It's
Self-publishing.
definitely not you.
It's me.
No,
It's
it's
me.
definitely not you. It's a lot of like
Why would she shame you like this?
Jane
By-
Camp
No, but
to
I-
Joburg type of.
Oh, I know what you're
You
doing.
know exactly what I'm talking about. And I was like, the first part I read it because I'm like, yeah, support black women. But I'm reading this and I'm like, damn, so we're just gonna
really one
publish
about me, right?
everything 100%. So, you know, it's like all of those things. And also because like growing up reading greats, like the bar is Toni Morrison. And it's just like.
And you're just like, on Allendale or Fram?
Exactly! Right?
Surely not.
Come on, man. As I watched the construction of Mall of Africa, I realized this is no longer my land. This is not Africa. Africa is not a mall. It is Midrand.
You see?
That's what I'm talking
I'm
about.
kind of envious of you guys because I feel like I have the opposite struggle where like I start, especially if I'm writing fiction or even like creative non-fiction, I don't get the plot early. I get like the mood and maybe like a character.
Well, that's amazing.
I know that sounds kind of weird,
It
but like
doesn't.
I get the detail. I get like setting and like I guess it's almost like a cinematographic way of like you get a scene and then I'm like I don't really know what the scene is about and my rat is like cool like I've painted this person, I've painted, but like what's she doing? Like what's gonna happen? Like where's she going?
But
How-
that's such a Sims
Yeah.
situation. Like you create this entire character, and then now you've got to drop it into a situation and see how they respond. That's so fucking cool.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't never know what situation to drop people into. It doesn't come as naturally.
Start with a fire and then.
And then
Funnily enough,
yeah,
the last piece I wrote started and ended with fire.
blame fire,
Little
blame
fires
fire.
everywhere.
Shout out for Tinoir, blame fire.
So I'm interested, at what point did you give up in your manuscript? How long are they? How many
There's a
words
lot of
are
boredom
they?
where you're like, oh, I'm so bored.
But can we get the titles though?
Stop asking. She would have told you if she
Maybe they're
wanted, man.
It's untitled.
So
Is this hard emotionally?
it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
Because I think, if I'm being brutally honest, writing for me started as escapism from toxic situations, right? And now it's difficult to write because it's like confronting
Demons.
the part in your life where like writing was literally the only way that you're still breathing right now, right? But then also like Toni Morrison's The Death of Me. She has this video where she talks about you can't ascribe your emotions to your characters because your emotion might not be enough to capture that character. So I've been dealing a lot with kind of like writing when I'm healthy and I'm happy, you know? And yeah, kind of just like navigating the fact that I can create this whole world that is not like an escapism for me, but it's like
It's real for your characters.
You're writing when you're falling apart type
We're
of thing.
using writing as therapy.
Yeah. And now it's just like, oh, you're so happy, you're living your best life. But you gonna write that book though, sis? No.
I see you with Royale, but with a manuscript though.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, at some point I just stopped writing. Also because I'm just like, how did I think this through? Because it's like, yes, you got that spark of idea, and like every day you're here, you're typing. Because I'm also the type of person that doesn't really like sit down and like mind map where it's going. I even struggle with academic writing, or even when like freelance writing, because then it'll come back and it has the headings, and I'm like, why? Because it must flow, it must flow. So yeah, that's partly the reason why.
But maybe it's
cheers,
not
my
meant
dear.
for you to finish those manuscripts.
No,
Maybe they
good for
serve
now.
the purpose
Thanks.
they
That's
needed to,
But at some point I must publish.
Yeah, but you'll do it when it's time.
I have to write to pay rent, so it's kind of, it has to be done at some point, whether it's with me crying or drunk or high or,
Yeah.
That's one of my bleakest things about writing. Is like feeling a character's emotion when you're like in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Like, so now you're in the club and you can see this character and you're just like, oh shit, that nigga's loneliness is here.
Yeah.
And now you just become that asshole in the club who's just chilling there. You're like, you don't understand,
Crying
dog.
into my Hennessy.
You don't understand, dog. It's so hard for my cat.
Yeah.
So can I, as someone who's like very, even my fiction in a way is like based on ethnographic stuff. So I'm like so interested in people who like seem to create characters out of, like, are there any characters, do you worry over what characters you feel like you can and can't write? What are your like feelings about where those
limitations are?
Yeah.
I think it's about where it's coming from. Firstly, if I know where it's coming from, then fuck the audience.
Sure.
Because you can't write with an audience in mind, especially if you're writing fiction. Because then you're just going to drive yourself fucking crazy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But then, to follow up on that, I've been grappling a lot with this kind of authenticity versus responsibility question, especially because the world that we're in is increasingly aware of every single thing.
Yeah.
And like, how do you write? So like, I was speaking to one of my friends from Namibia. She's also a writer, and she's an advocate for like colorism and so on. And we were talking about how do you describe a dark-skinned character?
An advocate for colorism.
Well, against
She's not
an advocate.
Sounds like culture.
An advocate against
Deco in reverse, boy.
rather. And she was talking about how like this other feminist who is like transphobic,
The J.K.
Nigerian lady, wrote in one of her
Amanda.
she wrote in one of her books that she described a dark-skinned character as like her skin was like a burnt pot of rice.
Stop it.
Holy
Type
shit.
of thing, right? So that's
Holy
like,
shit.
also
It's
the
very
question-
on brand for that answer.
right? The question of now being like, okay, how do I write responsibly but also in an authentic way if the character that I'm portraying, for instance, is racist? Like if you've read Disgrace by Jem Kutia, it makes you as a black person feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So that's also raised.
Can I just say there was a line in that motherfucker where I was like, yo, like this is so racist but impressive at the same time.
Right?
When he was like, then the dude tripped me. One of those skills they must have picked up from soccer. I was like,
See, and then you also like, but this author's kind of getting
I was like, that
comfortable.
that is the most well-placed insult I've ever heard.
Like I'm upset, but I recognize
I get it.
Like,
a daily microaggression.
Liv Schreiber does the same thing, and we need to talk about Kevin. She's like talking about there's a black woman sitting next to her, waiting to see her son in juvie, and she's like, while she's like all panicky and whatever, this black lady is so patient, and she's like, it's because it's probably because they're used to waiting for everything.
Wow.
What are you gonna? But what's the comeback? No, we don't. Wait. Still waiting on my Telkom line, dog.
That you're building.
I mean, I guess for me the interesting thing about this idea of writing responsibly, it's also people aren't perfect in real life, and so I always worry that we are seeking to write these characters that in every way seem like their politics are in order.
Exactly.
And that worries me because
a lie.
I don't know if I know anyone who's like that.
Exactly.
And so I'm always interested, I guess, in characters who seem kind of a little off, because those are the people that I recognize. I also, I guess, worry as well about, I guess, the idea of what the author knows and what the author believes in versus what the characters in the book believe in. Because often I think we've kind of meshed the author and the work into one, and that seems to me. So there's ideas of like what characters can't you write as an author, as opposed to what characters can you create as an author, which is your job, that you must create these characters. And so I guess even as you are reading characters as an author, you have to fully understand them to write them in the imperfect ways that you want them, And so for me, I'm always just kind of just like, every time I read a perfect character, I'm just like, fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
Because I don't know anyone who's got all these politics correct and checked, everything checks out. And so
But they also become the most unlikable character.
Totally.
And interesting. You're just
And
like,
interesting and
I know what you
unlikable, I
believe
agree.
in, I know what you're going to do, and I'm just like, it's like shock me.
As
Yeah.
men, do you battle to write women?
I don't. I guess I don't in my own kind of way. There's one thing to kind of
Are there a lot of heaving bosoms?
right. No, I mean, I guess it's the idea of writing a certain kind of character that you understand.
Yeah.
And then have people kind of like say, I don't recognize this character, which becomes, I guess, an interesting conversation, I guess, which doesn't necessarily speak to struggling to write that character.
Yeah.
But it gets interesting when that's a form of critique.
Yes.
I like that, but when that's what the entire critique hinges on. I don't recognize this, therefore it doesn't exist.
I mean, I guess it's also the trap that reviewers have fallen into, right, across visual arts or films or literature, where people are just like, it's relatable. I'm just like, what does that even fucking mean, right?
Yeah.
Like, sure, I get what relatable means, but I don't know if I get it when it comes to the merits of the work. A character being relatable doesn't mean that the work is good, right? It just means that somehow there's some traits.
In yourself.
Yeah. But I'm still interested in the poetry of the work rather than a character that's relatable or a story that's relatable. I'm interested. Is it beautiful?
Yeah.
Right. And then we can begin to kind of like, why do I like this character? Why don't I like this character?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how I.
So, out of interest, form or content?
Come again.
Say more.
Form or content?
For me, I think form. I mean, it's the same reason I'm not a big fan of genre fiction. I have no interest in this kind of this plot twist and plots and all of those things. I mean, it's the same reason that if someone has seen a movie, I'm just gonna tell me what it's about, because I'm not so much interested in what it's about. I'm interested in how does it get to be about that? How does it do that? Right? And so I have no interest in genre fiction, because plot and reveals and all those things, I'm just like, yeah, whatever. I'm rather interested. I'm interested in the small bits, before the character gets to that point. I'm interested in the very small shifts in character or story, rather than this kind of Joburg imploding or whatever the fuck is going on in the story.
Is that a sub?
On myself, to be honest, on the last short story that I wrote, funny enough, I was struggling with the editors understanding that I'm hinting at Johannesburg imploding, but I don't need it to implode, because that's far less interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because it's like such a grand thing that's clear. I guess it's clear what kind of makes that up. I'm
but
interested.
the suggestion
Yeah,
and the build-up.
I'm
There's
interested
a-
in the little bits that
Yeah.
make that up rather than the thing.
There's a weird overlap in our work then, because one of the short stories I wrote this year, Pretoria gets leveled.
You should just combine them and make a short film. Just feed them into each other.
I think so.
I think so.
I called mine the Great Quarantine. Just like Pretoria gets destroyed completely because like the Afrikaners are trying to lead another revolution, or they're trying to do another coup.
I'll show you a book here.
Formal content.
Yeah, I think I'm probably on the form side. I mean, I think a lot of my writing is informed a little bit by my discipline. Like my orientation is like to pay attention to like very mundane, everyday, like that stuff. I like, even with the stuff I consume, like I prefer, you know, when people ask me like, what films do you like, or whatever, and I'm always like, you know, the films where like nothing happens, basically. Are often the ones that I like, where like nothing happens, but
Like what?
yeah, I mean, it's so hard to think of like good examples, because I was, you know, ones that are just super character driven, where like you feel like the film they started and ended, but like there's no particular event. I'm like,
I just watched one.
I can't think of good examples right now.
I just watched one now with Willem Dafoe and what is it called? It was like about this
A
like
recent one.
yeah, it's like 2017, and it's about this woman who's like, you know, she's not in the best state. Sorry, and she lives in Florida. She's got a daughter, but it's not poverty porn driven. It's more, what is it?
Florida Project.
The Florida Project, yeah. And it's not like poverty porn of, oh my god, she's like struggling to make ends meet. It's more focused on like seeing the world through the eyes of the kid. Of like, you know, you can see the world is like kind of fucked up, but the kid doesn't.
Yeah.
Like the kid's used to this and like is constantly adjusting and making ways for her to like sort of remain happy and to like to sort of sustain herself.
I love like a really, like when the dialogue is like sparse but like perfect, like cutting, like I don't know. That's the kind of story that gets. But I also, similarly to you, like I think it's very important to write characters you don't fully understand. I mean, I do understand that people have concerns about people reaching, you know, beyond what it is that they know. But I feel like part of the political exercise, even of writing, is an exercise of, I mean, I want to say empathy, but even that word like is starting to sound very pandering. I mean, what I have in my head is like, I've been doing a lot of research in the Karoo recently, and I often find myself interviewing people who I have quite fierce political disagreements with. And like one of the challenges for me is like, how do I write this character in a way that they're not just like a caricature, you know, like that I can make sense of how this person comes to be in the world, and also how I am like a refraction of them, or at least my writing of them is also a refraction of them and me, or I don't know, or something.
How do you complicate it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think like there is more and more burden on us to, I mean, I know it's hard work, but like to figure out how to do that. I mean, it's become like very trite now to be like, oh, the world is polarized or whatever. But like how, and I so often, like I fully empathize with the disposition to be like, I can't actually tolerate this person. But I also recognize that often the people I can't tolerate are people who I just like can't fathom. Even if I'm gonna fathom them like through my writing, maybe I don't have to fathom them like face to face all the time. But I don't know, there's like something important for me that needs to happen there.
People I can't fathom, that's amazing. I think I get a lot of people.
I mean, yeah,
I think if we put you in like a runner, you'd be cool.
Oh, definitely. I grew up playing rugby, bro.
Would be.
I grew up in Pretoria playing rugby. me and those cats are going to be alright.
We're gonna be alright.
Yeah.
Mid-Asia.
We're gonna be alright.
I'm gonna be right. I'm gonna be alright.
But it's important
I
because
can't ever think of that without ever thinking of the next video.
Imagine this in
Stop
your mouth.
it! Say don't. So I'm just like, yeah.
No.
Yo, and then when Thingy was talking, what he said, when his whole this was,
In Parliament.
Doug.
Jeez, Parliament is a lot.
Masculinity is a lot.
Oh gosh. Please.
But it's
So
good.
what's the
You
most-
should go right.
So like on that, like what's the most annoying thing that like male authors do outside of like writing women, obviously?
With heaving bosoms.
I could hear the drum beat beneath her bosoms. Her ribcage was.
Not
Sounded
the drum
like-
beat.
Of the African soil. Papa, stop it. No, it's not that.
Yo. If I'm
I'm
being
trying to
brutally
think.
honest, I can't remember the last book that I read by a man.
Me neither. And I'm trying very hard.
I mean, Standard Procedure Solo Daker is probably the person I return to the most. But also because I don't think men can write women.
Nothing.
I thought you were gonna leave it at men.
Yeah.
I don't think men can
write. Period.
Look, in South Africa, we're facing a little bit of a crisis when it comes to that because they're the old school cats that are holding onto the reins. And a lot of the time I'll try and read their work and it's that English, old school clevers. That and it doesn't, and it doesn't really translate,
When I was running from the train, I realized
nincompoop. And
I was antiquated to the position that they was running.
favorite. And I'm just guys, I'm
Do you know
not
the
quite
level
sure.
of foolishness you must exude to be a nincompoop?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
to get someone to say that without breaking a smile.
No, you can't. A nincompoop.
Someone is like, "You bloody nincompoop."
I would scream with laughter. Nincompoop.
So are you struggling with the language or with
Or is it the register?
is it the
I
Or the
struggle to
inaccuracy.
believe what they're saying.
Mm.
But I
A South
also,
African man's condition.
I also feel hey man, it's difficult for me to, and I'm trying this new thing where I'm trying to approach work with generosity. But with the old school cats, the same thing over and over and over and over again. And I actually had a conversation with one person who is, deemed to be fantastic South African black male author and tops.
Is he on Twitter?
No, I don't think so. And there's just also this arrogance of because I was coming to him and I'm telling him, no, I'm gonna write this book, whatever. It's based in Soweto, and he's like, you can never write about Soweto. When you think about Soweto, you think of me and Bra Mangma. You're from Pretoria, write about Mailula.
Who is this? Georgie Zamdela? What's happening?
It's you can never write Soweto the way Nick Mshongo writes Soweto.
Oh God, shut up, sir.
And it's just damn.
Mr. Sir, you are a nincompoop.
Also, I wasn't asking your permission.
Right? And you know what I did? I fell into that trap and I moved my entire plot.
No!
Because believability is such a big thing.
You're
for
a
me as well.
nincompoop.
And
He's gone from being
ever since I've changed the location of that book, I haven't written in almost a year.
You see, you let the males get to you.
Yeah.
The
I
males.
just think it
'Cause now
surely
I'm
can't
saying
reach a
males.
point where all we can write is autobiography. We have to find a way beyond this impasse. It just,
Mm.
yeah, I don't know. We're gonna acknowledge we might, have blind spots and do bad things.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There has to be a way that you don't only have to write about your own life in your place and the things that you know.
What's annoying to me is the fear of making mistakes.
Yeah.
But the one thing I do enjoy
that's
is
my most
young,
crippling characteristic.
Yeah.
Being a perfectionist and a writer is not things that should happen together. It's so
You're
debilitating.
very exposed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And already just being like a young-ish black female.
Yeah.
Don't worry, you're still young.
So, you know,
The
it's
youth
okay.
league accepts you with open arms.
No, they don't. They don't. They told me, no, thank you. Thank you for your application. It just, I already suffer a lot from like imposter syndrome, and then when I'm writing, I'm just like, I'm my own worst enemy right now. Like,
But that's how
you're
you
trying
got
to
me.
say things, but you're leaving yourself no room for error or like just humanness. Like it's actually that's my worst part of writing.
So here's a converse question. Do either of you write men?
No,
I do.
it's not my business.
I do.
How do you write men? With his throbbing
His
member
throbbing-
looking at member. With his throbbing member.
First of all, this is not 50 Shades. I do, but I like to write men that are unimagined. So I like to, like, one of my favorite characters that I've ever written about is like a professor who's in the closet. And everyone can see, like, everyone in the community knows that, you know, this man is very flamboyant, and I enjoy writing about, you know, his battle with his masculinity, but at the same time he's very, like, he doesn't care. So I enjoy writing men that, yeah, I wouldn't write like a, you know, hegemonic masculinity, whatever, because then I would also come with the question of like, how much of my own stuff am I importing onto this character because they're a cis-het male or a cisgendered male. So I really enjoy like writing unimagined men and unimagined masculinity. Yeah.
I think the reason I don't is it would be either an exercise in me trying to make him into what I want men to be,
Yeah.
or the polar opposite, where I'd be like, you're the very definition of fuck shittery, you know. And I don't think I'm evolved enough to write just a person, you know.
That's interesting.
Well, a male person.
Do you write males?
A resounding yes.
I do. I mean, I mean, you know, I do. But I guess my thing about it is, I guess it's always the thinking around how does a character fit into the story, and what kind of character they are to fit the narrative that I'm trying to work on. So it's never really one idea of what a male is, or a woman character is, or a child, or a boy, or a girl, but it's really trying to work with what works for that particular story.
Yeah.
So I guess in a way I render them differently in the different work that and how they feed into that particular narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also I guess, you know, the other thing I want to ask is, how do you guys write characters? Do you decide what makes them up, what they look like, or do you kind of just write and as you go along, you know?
See, it's funny because for me, I think, like, it's so funny that I was just like, we can't all end up writing autobiography. Like, maybe that's also my cop-out position, because in the thing I hate writing most is myself. I don't. Like, I think I'm almost... I have to try to get over it, but I'm almost like too cowardly to do it. So like,
I'm not trying to get over. I'm. If I wrote myself, it'd be the most boring piece of literature.
yeah, but not even. It doesn't even have to be yourself, like autobiography. But you know, some people draw the characters from.
Oh
their own
gosh, this
personal-
is nothing.
But I find that what has happened with me is like I go out and do I do like anthropological field work, and sometimes, you know, given the nature of academia, I have to write it academically, but a lot of the time I feel like its expression should not be academic. And so sometimes that takes the form of a more creative non-fiction, but sometimes I've taken it into fiction. So the characters are composites of people that I know and have worked with, but it's almost like the fiction sometimes gives me more permission to tell the truth than the non-fiction does. Because the non-fiction, it's funny, and the nature of reality is that you never feel like you know enough to write it. Like, I feel so concerned every time I write a character, no matter how much time I've spent with this person. I'm like, well, I have all my biases and I don't know X, Y, and Z about them, and who knows how they presented on this day, and like I'm just like ethically wrought all the time about what I'm doing. Whereas with non-fiction, I can like take them as a base and fill in the blanks and like really use the kind of empathy and complexity to fill in holes, and I feel like it does justice to the truth of what's happening much more than when I have to write what the limitations of what I know or have seen with my own eyes. But I think it's like incredible that people can create characters. I mean, I guess you always, I suppose even fiction writers that aren't like basing their stuff on field work, in some ways there's always like composite characters of sorts of people that you... Is it scary when people can like read? Like, are there people who you've written about who would know that it was based on them?
So mine is quite interesting because a lot of people close to me read it as somewhat semi-autobiographical.
Sure.
But I don't see it. Like, I can see like little moments that I took and like expanded on and like made them crazy or whatever, but I can't see the autobiography in it. Like, cause
they're very relatable.
Yeah, exactly. Everything that Lidudumalingani doesn't want, I obviously did.
I mean, for sure. I guess they can be relatable, but I think to take away only that from a piece of literature is...
No, of course.
Yeah,
but I think also it's like with books, or even like with movies or TV series, when you watch them or read them in different times of your life, you pull different things from different characters. And that's where the relatability stems from, where you're like, this either makes me very uncomfortable because it's something I battle to reconcile within myself, or I'm like, oh yeah, I do.
I see.
That, you know? It's not an insult. I think it's just indicative of the
not
very... No, but it means you write people well. Because you're making real people.
Like, well, my mom said something that was super weird because, like, I wrote, like, whatever the fuck that I wrote. And then she was like, it's really strange reading this book because I didn't realize how much you picked up on as a kid.
Oh.
And I was like, shit, okay. So...
Was this factual?
I guess... No, it was Born Freeloaders. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I guess... I wrote something that was relatable to you and your asshole friends.
Wow. So
that was like a cool moment. But like again, it's like for me, I wasn't writing it with the intention of being like autobiographical in any sense. Like I was just playing around with the ideas that were like rolling around in my head and like my own observations of like being a kid and like my own observations of like participating within like an African culture context of like child and an adult. So like when she said that, I was just kind of like, that's actually pretty wild that you could recognize that.
It's also very cool that like she read your work and engages with you on it.
Yeah, she my mom is the most curious human being in the world.
Yeah.
So she does that all the time. So when I published my first short story, To Shy Away in Silence, it was like a really, really, like it's about, this dude is trying to commit suicide, but like he keeps checking it out, and like there's all sorts of things going on there, and it's like a pretty rough story, but like I think I try to make it as humorous as possible, and like my mom was trying to call me as soon as it was published. I was like, fuck, I'm not in the mood for this conversation. And then eventually I pick up the phone, I'm at work, and I'm like, Mom, I'm running into a meeting, and she's just like, I'm lying to her, and she's like, no, Nani, I just want to say what you wrote is so important. Of course, the facts are not for me. That's for your generation. But she was just like, it's so important. Like, this conversation needs to be had. And I was just like, oh shit, like, I'm sorry for like
Yeah,
undermining like,
your phone calls.
yeah, like undermining your ability to engage.
Like underestimating.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you make these assumptions on your parents' behalf, like all the time.
I sometimes get this around like when I write or even like perform stuff that's like very sex driven,
Yeah.
which has definitely been a pattern. And then it's like, can be real or, I mean, especially with my father, it's like, I don't know how comfortable we are. I mean, like, he's chill, but it's also like not a natural, like, I don't write it thinking my dad's gonna read it, you know what I'm saying?
Of course.
But do you think that it also like holds you back in writing what your parents are going to think?
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, it probably does if you let it live there while you do the writing.
That's the thing, and that's the thing of like trying to block out the audience,
Yeah.
right? Is because you're constantly like restricting yourself if you've got like an audience in mind. But like I definitely censor myself, like knowing that my parents and their friends are going to read this, and I know people won't believe that
That's you censored.
that's me censored. But yeah, you know, my writing's definitely gonna get a lot weirder, like as we progress through time.
in Bermuda.
Chief, I'm going to find
if you
missionaries,
return.
mercenaries in Bermuda.
Oh,
I'm gonna find 50 good men and we're taking Botswana.
Botswana of all places.
We need those diamond deposits there, dog.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure if you ask nicely, they'll just give it to you.
Do you know, this is a funny story, and I've actually never told you this, but I felt really uncomfortable reading Born Freeloaders that I still haven't finished it.
Oh yeah?
Like, I breezed through Fatu, like, I was like, this book is so weird. I was like telling everyone, like, look at this, like, what the fuck is this? What's in this person's mind? I want to live in that mind, you know? And then Born Freeloaders, it was just like middle class living in Pretoria. I went to a private school. Like, everything that was written there, I was just like, yo, It's like, it's pulling at a discomfort that I haven't quite been able to name yet.
And I think a lot of people felt that way. And also because I don't think Born Freeloaders is written in like the expected universal way in which you're supposed to write about like millennial privilege, right? Which is you're supposed to offer contrition, and like you're supposed to constantly like be
But also
reflecting.
be sympathetic.
Oh yeah, but also be reflecting on
yeah.
this like
Yeah.
mire of privilege.
Yeah.
And I wrote them as they would be as people. which is-
Unreflective as they
Yeah.
possibly can. Yeah.
Yeah, like this is what they were born into. This is the life that they're used to. They don't like. Why should they be apologetic for like occupying the spaces? And like a lot of people have sort of like pushed back against that, which I completely understand why it's uncomfortable. Which I mean, it makes complete sense. Yeah, and I got a couple of and the fact that I was also writing about political proximity. So then it detaches the story even more, because now you're like, not only are you writing about middle class motherfuckers that don't give a fuck, like about the fact that they're middle class and they openly like engaging on all these levels of society in South Africa, but you're also writing about motherfuckers who are like whose parents are chowing out cash, kind of thing, you know.
Absolutely.
And that's how they get to live this life. So I completely understand like the alienation that people feel from that book. It makes sense.
And what do you make of it? Do you find it a necessarily bad thing? Or
No,
good?
I wrote the best story that I had inside me at the time.
No, I'm not so much asking about whether you think the story is good or not, but I'm asking about, do you care about the alienation, or do you find it? Because there's often also the idea that you write characters who are so, like, you just hate them so much, or they're so specific.
Yeah.
That I guess the issue of relatability is thrown out the window. But they're such full characters that you can't deny them that. Whether you agree with what they're doing or not, but you recognize that I get why this person did that because this is the kind of, you know, so, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's an interesting space to exist in at the moment, for the work to exist in actually.
Yeah.
Because it leaves a lot to then be engaged with. So what, like, the only thing that irks me is like when someone like pretends to get it and then like goes in on like a lot of things that they don't understand about it. Instead of asking the questions of, is this the point, or like, is this where it's going, or like, how does this fit in, like, but then now like there's like these assertions that this is what's happening, this is like, and then it's like, dude, if you don't know, then just ask, you know. I'm not dead. You can holler, and then you can still criticize the book after that, like if you want to, in whatever way you want, but like engage with the text, not the person who you think wrote the text.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because I'm also thinking about, I guess, this idea that, I mean, I don't know if I want readers to come back to me and ask to clear anything in my writing, right? Because I guess there's this idea that the work means different things.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you're saying if you read it at a different time, it means something else, and if you're, you know, I guess the thing that you're pointing at is the idea that people shouldn't speak about it as if this is the only way to read this work. That, you know, people's reading of work shouldn't be, this is what's happening in the story. Should rather be, this is what this is what is happening for me, because someone else reads the work and they completely read it differently. I mean, I guess the thing about, I guess, reader and writer conversations are always interesting. What the reader is understanding and what the writer wanted to say, and I guess what is left unsaid or said in the middle of all of those things.
You must never have a book launch or do any prayers, because that's literally the entire thing. When you did this, like, what do you, surely this
I'm just
character,
always just
and
like
just be like
not
next.
Yeah, I'm like next.
Pass.
Whatever you think it means, that's exactly what it means.
Run with it.
It's such a moment though, because your work, like, it feels so attached to you.
Yeah.
And then the moment it's published, I feel like it doesn't, and you kind of have to let go. Like, it doesn't belong to you
And
anymore.
it's
It belongs
so,
to the reader,
like,
and that's like really
harrowing. It's such a exposing, like, very vulnerable moment.
And I also feel like
6
it's
weeks prior,
impossible.
sorry.
No, sorry. I was going to say it's also like impossible. I mean, I'm thinking about you reflecting on your work, but I think this is probably true of many places. But I think it's very hard to write anything about this country and it not like touch people. Like, I don't mean touch people. I mean, like, they get
on their
touched.
studios.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it really doesn't matter what even you say. It's just like the very content of our everyday lives and our past is such that you can just say a single word, like land, race. You can just write that. That's sufficient, whatever.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
there to be feeling, and I think we're living in a time where, like, suddenly, I don't know, was there ever a time? I feel like there was this time where authors just sent their work into the world and then it went to this abyss and they didn't. Whereas now I feel like from the moment you even let people know you're writing a book.
Well,
When
Zadie,
we wrote,
speaks about that.
we didn't tell anyone. We told like our family, maybe our families, and then when I knew there was nothing, it's out of my hands. Then I was like, oh, we wrote a book, and people were like, when did you? And I was just like, this is exactly why I wrote it in Paris, and I wish I could have left it in Paris, because this is what it was. So, oh God, I felt like I was running naked through the streets.
Yeah.
It was terrible. And to be such a control freak, and now suddenly my whole locus of control was completely extra. I was just like, don't read it. Never.
And people read it as such a reflection of you, like. Because the thing is also, I mean, what you write is how and who you are at that time with those particular characters, with, like, I don't know.
It's also, I guess, the thing of, like, really trying to write, I guess, like a very short thing for over, 2 weeks, and you cry and you drink and you smoke and you want to die and, and then people read it in like 2 minutes.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
And then they're just like, And you're just like, motherfucker, I spent a whole fucking
And
month
you
writing that thing.
I was hospitalized.
And now you're just gonna be like I didn't work. You know? So there's also that for me where I'm just like, but do you get like what I'm trying?
Words were coming out of my
You
mouth.
know what I mean?
Get it, motherfucker.
Yeah. And then
English.
people point things out, and you're just like, I thought all of that, but I got rid of that in my 5th draft. So don't ask me.
Don't underestimate. I know. It's just so pedestrian.
Which I guess for me is the interesting thing about characters is that I feel like if you're going to write a character as the author, you should know everything. And then you should make the decision to like, no, I'm going to leave out this and that because I'm trying to get to this point. Right. But sometimes you read work and you're just like, the motherfucker doesn't know shit. Because you can tell that there's like nothing specific and well thought out in this character. Which I guess is you know, how you guys feel about male authors who write women characters, where you're just like, why do you need to describe the bosom when she's just walking to the shop?
For real.
Like the bosom
She's
does
just
not.
on the phone, dude. What happened?
Right? It's like it's not interfering with the signal, or you know, it's like
I can't hear you.
because the signal is being blocked by my bosom. I'm just like,
5G coding. Wow.
which is interesting, I guess, also because I mean, I read a lot of the older black male authors, and you can tell the way that they describe women that it's like they're always there's a tavern, and they're always just like walking in with their bosoms, and they have no
Walking
money,
out with the bosom,
and they're drunk,
walking out with their buds, and
Right.
it's just things, and I'm like,
and it's just like, are you
With
reading?
voluptuous.
we can't even exist in books and peace.
Hey.
Like,
They're voluptuous.
voluptuous, even young M, like in Limpopo.
Yeah, and I think it's more upsetting when they write that work today, and you just like, I can perhaps excuse it if you're writing back in the days and there was no other alternative voices around you, but I'm just like, today?
It's
Like, you're not reading anyone else to be writing this kind of shit today? But I guess, you know, they kind of like own Soweto, so you can't do
How dare you?
How dare you write a different woman
My
character
God.
as opposed to the one
Who doesn't
with the
walk in
bosoms
with her
and-
bosom?
Yeah.
In Soweto.
Yeah.
The other thing that frustrates me about, like, let's say someone's a reader and then like they're doing a review. So like I had someone like do a review on Born Freeloaders, right?
I know this. I know.
No, but like this person asked a question that I'd answered for 7 pages prior to the situation that they were asking about, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
They didn't
but
read
I
the
spent the
book.
last 7 pages describing everything, and then you're gonna ask the question, but then answer the same question that you've asked rhetorically, but like have not acknowledged
Make up
has
your
already
own
been
answers
answered
in your head.
Yeah. So like there's
Yeah.
stuff like that happens. That kind of shit like kind of gets frustrating, and then you're like, but also Zadie Smith said something that's like really interesting. She's like, well, not really interesting. It's
Like, it was interesting, but now I'm just like, no,
It's
fuck
like,
that, nah.
No,
that
it's-
qualify a good
no,
person.
just a survival
It
mechanism.
was notable, whatever.
Just a survival mechanism, just like her being like I tried Twitter, like it's just not for me. Like I can't imagine putting out work when people are going to respond to it immediately. She was like talking about, I want to take 5 years to review Lemonade, kind of thing. Like this thing was made over like a period of time, and I also want to
Due
know
diligence.
what, like, yeah, I also want to go through like the album and like chill with it for a hot minute. But being on Twitter almost makes that impossible.
People drop albums at midnight, and by 7 o'clock the next day, there's a review.
No, there's 10.
And you just like, you listen to all the songs. Like,
Doug,
But
how many
that's
times could you have
because-
listened to these songs?
That's because it's like, it's a competition, right? It's not real.
who's
It's-
publishing first?
Yeah.
It's like,
Look,
Who can say the first and the most and the this and the... And you're
I
just
get
like,
it.
Really?
In terms of being on the other side, being that person that has reviewed.
Yeah.
And
Lemonade
I-
at 7 a.m.
I literally was that person where Akweke Amezi's book came out
Yeah.
and it hadn't even been published in South Africa, and I had read and reviewed it
Damn, bitch.
Yes.
because I wanted to be
That good.
the first.
Yeah.
Financially, because it's the real thing.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, of course.
like, especially when you're pitching for book reviews, where it's just like the moment you're gonna take your time and you're gonna read this book.
No, but the people who are reviewing Lemonade are not being paid. They're just being the first.
No,
in the
I'm
world.
talking about
No,
like
I'm not talking
Like
about
doing
that.
it like
Yeah.
like
I'm
real.
not talking about it for monetary purposes.
yeah.
So talk to us about poets. Who are you reading? Who is on hand?
I mean, right now I'm reading Sihle, who's a poet out of Durban.
Tim,
Sihle. Oh my God, what is
And don't edit this bit out. We want
what
to see you
is
sweat.
the same way we're keeping Jamal. Jamil.
Yeah, we keeping Jamal.
It's a liminal space with the name, bro. Come on.
Very racist.
Just cut all that bits together. Like the video is coming next week, and you're like Jamal. It's like, then you cut to the video. There's nothing about that. I'm just like, what the fuck?
Clickbait.
But that's what I'm currently reading, and I mean I always return to Manel's work. I always return to old poets.
Is there an author that
so-
you battle with, like you
That
just
I battle
know?
reading?
Yeah, just, and to the point where you're now just like, you know what?
We're done.
Well-
We're no longer doing this.
Oh, dude. I feel like I'm on the Twitter edition of Unpopular Opinion.
Come on
Is
with
it
it.
Jamil?
It's Jamal, dog. No, man.
I hated it.
So, look, it doesn't take away my respect from him as a writer. And I think his work is still very important, and I can appreciate his books, what he's done with them. But I just find Baldwin so boring.
See,
Ah.
I knew this
But
was
you know,
coming.
I do think, and I was actually going to talk about this earlier because it's so interesting that we're a bunch of writers all sitting around talking to each other, because there's some authors who I find easier to engage in their speaking voice than in their writing voice. And not even just easier, like powerful.
Yeah.
And I don't feel as strongly about, like, I've enjoyed reading Baldwin, but I've especially enjoyed listening to Baldwin.
Yeah.
Like when Baldwin speaks, yeah, he's a great artist.
Another friend of mine was like making the point that once you become an activist and an artist, something gets lost. Like one of the things that you're doing, like somewhere it's going to, like it's going to be, so one of the things is going to be eroded.
Arunati Roy is an example of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of small things like piano come back, and then it's just like
Ministry of
Ministry
the
of
Ministry of
Utmost
Magic.
Confusion.
The Ministry of Magic under Dolores Umbridge. Like,
Some people love that book, though.
People
They
love
loved it.
There was a review in the Irish Times who, I mean, I like their reviews, and so they wrote the review of Arunda's book, and the last...
I really want to like you, but how must I like you when you say you like the reviews in the Irish Times?
Beautiful! In the Irish Times! It's online, you can like really,
Like,
you know.
yeah.
And
No, there's that moment where it's like, no, you gotta be where Joyce was, nigga, if you gonna take
And so they were like, so this reviewer is like, this book is like when you start knitting a jersey in the dark, and then you finish and then you switch on the light and it has 3 sleeves. And I was like, you know,
That's how you feel about Arundhati?
I didn't finish that book. I tried reading it and I was just like,
But
I
the
love
question-
the essays better than
Yeah,
better than
yeah,
this.
So the
yeah.
question remains, guys, which authors, because I'm not gonna be the only motherfucker.
Oh, I got time. We got time. I got time.
Because I'm not the only motherfucker going under this bus, bro.
No, you were, but I struggle to answer the question because I mean, in general, and it speaks to what you're saying, I've always struggled to read fiction. And it's not just the labor of it, it's that I've spent so much time reading non-fiction before work that, like, I associate reading often with work, and it's very hard for me to be like, detach now, read your novel, you know? So I don't think I've ever, like, gone down a rabbit hole of one author enough to know, like, I have strong like, I'll just read pieces of, like, different, I mean,
But I think also sometimes an author can be tied to an event in your life, and then you just have like a block against that person.
Sure.
You know? Like a lot of reading in high school, I'm just like, I'm never going back. You know, insert white author here. You know,
July's people. Couldn't
do it.
I just couldn't. I knew I needed this for matric. I was just like.
There's some classics I can't I
literally
read Charles
made up
Dickens. You know.
Dickens is an acquired taste.
For me, it's Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Oh my gosh!
Shoot me!
Oh my god! Shoot me, please! Someone get an AK-47.
Really?
With a bazooka.
That's so interesting because you're the second person I've met who's passionate about
all of her work, or short stories, novels, essays.
I can't. NW.
That
conversation that we were having about like being deliberately obtuse. It's like, what was the reason?
Sometimes
swing time.
You know what? My partner feels like this exactly about Zadie Smith, but
What? No, dog.
We're all being shot by bazookas here.
I love every boat. Which camera should I be?
Shout out to the camera.
I love every boat. I read every boat.
Even the elder South African
everyone. I love every boat.